Mason is a fierce warrior of the U.S. Special Forces specializing in carrying out difficult operation abroad. In one action his team was sent to Paldonian to destroy dictator Juan Venegas. However, just before preparing to land, the team plane ate a rocket and fell straight to the ground, exploding. Only Mason was lucky enough to escape death, and the entire crew and other warrior died many years later. Our male protagonist left the army to return to a normal life. He has now married a beautiful wife, and they have a cute princess together. However, the psychological damage still haunts him. Mason had never let go. This morning he waited for his daughter to go to school as usual. She said that at school she was often bullied by a boy, but when he told this to the teacher did nothing. There is no other way for Mason to have to teach his daughter how to defend herself. Aim for her throat and strike quickly to make sure she will never touch her again. After that, the male lead drove to the office. In order to integrate into life, he chose to be a lawyer, but people don't often go to lawyers with little experience, like Mason, who only comes to argue cases that no lawyer wants to take on. It was my turn to step in at this moment. Sebastian opened the door and walked in. He was Mason's teammates during the time the male lead was still in the army. He accepted the invitation of his close friend Mason to visit the military base to review his memories. According to old memories, it turns out that after retiring from football, Sebastian founded a company specializing in protecting important people, and the purpose of him inviting Mason here was to ask his old friend to help him. After hearing this, the male lead immediately refused because his fighting skills had decreased a lot. Not to mention that he is now old, so his physical strength is no longer guaranteed. Most importantly, he does want to see his wife and children being enjoyed by someone else. However, Sebastian said that after once completed, Mason will receive $250,000, which is equal to the 10 years he worked hard to earn. Not only that, this mission is not difficult at all. He just needs to protect the life of a female reporter. While she was conducting an interview with a head of state, "Come here," Mason suddenly heard a familiar voice. Isn't the man on TV the dictator Juan Venegas, the one who gave orders to his subordinates, launching a rocket in an hour killed all of his previous teammates? And Mason's mission was to protect the female reporter Claire from conducting an interview with Juan Venegas in Paldonia. Even though the salary that Sebastian paid was quite generous, Mason still refused because he thought that his wife and children were more important than anyone expected. As soon as he got home, he was scolded by his wife like a slap in the face. It turned out that his daughter listened to her father and beat her classmate so that she had to be hospitalized for treatment. Despite the external injuries, the boy also suffered serious psychological damage. The Mason couple concept of life is in complete contrast to their constant quarreling, causing their feelings to become damaged. In order to avoid conflicts that could turn into chaos, it turned into a broken marriage. I decided to accept the mission, but the wife stepped me because she didn't want the husband to go to dangerous place. I only protected a female reporter for a few days, and then received $250,000. So go quickly or you be late for work. After arriving at Grey House, the female reporter thought that Ghost Mason was a crazy person, so she grabbed the book and signed in. The male lead was speechless and hastily told the other person his true identity. After we cleared up the misunderstanding, he quickly drove the beauty to the airport. After landing in Paldonia, they were personally welcomed by President Juan Venegas and his guards. The initial impression was that he was very happy and friendly. Charity is in complete contrast to what the Western media says is a dangerous dictatorship. The convoy is divided into 2 cars, front and back, protecting people moving into the city on Juan Venegas Street, advertising that its people have a good life, warm and happy. But when he waved to a little girl, he unexpectedly responded with a very fatherly gesture to overcome his embarrassments. He immediately said that freedom of speech is also a good feature of Paldonia. When the whole group came running on a suspension bridge, the car in front suddenly ran over him and exploded. Lying face up in the sky, still panicking, the army suddenly burst out and opened fire, attacking them, killing 10 of the president's security guards right on the spot. After calming down, Menon immediately put Clay and Juan Venegas' heads down to avoid bullets, then climbed into the driver's seat and saw the rebels holding the rocket for an hour. The male lead quickly reversed the car and turned the steering wheel just in time, avoiding the bullet. The escort vehicle behind picked up a rocket that exploded into pieces while the soldier was still busy reloading bullets. Mason accelerated the accelerator and crushed into drunken meat. At this moment, another armed group appeared to block both ends of the bridge, causing them to fall into a situation where Mason told the remaining 2 people to wear seat belts and then stepped back at full throttle, forcing the enemy car to flatten like a shrimp, then accelerated and crashed directly into the car in front, causing the flying soldier to stick his head into the windshield. And on the spot, hearing the gunfire, Mason immediately jumped out of the car and crashed into the bridge wall, causing him to injure his back and try to suppress it. Juan Venegas was in pain and quickly opened fire, killing the last 2 soldiers. Juan Venegas wanted to hug Mason to thank him, but he pushed he could easily hug the enemy who killed his comrades. So after checking the scene, the president discovered that the group of people who wanted to assassinate him were not rebels but soldiers in the army. This means that someone wants a coup to steal the government. That means the dictator was betrayed, which made Clay very excited. She wanted to go to the city with Juan Venegas to find out about this case, but Mason refused. His mission was to protect the female reporter. If unfortunately, Clay had a peaceful and beautiful grave, who will pay for him to take care of his wife and children? So the male lead temporarily took her into the forest to find a place for him to hide first. Juan Venegas did whatever he wanted, but he hadn't been walking for long before Clay was out of breath. It was difficult to stop and rest at this time. Juan Venegas was afraid that if he went alone he would be lost son, so he chased after the two people. Clay asked who was most capable of carrying out the biggest coup. The president immediately replied that there were many people who wanted that. Feeling that this mission was beyond his capabilities, Mason had to use his satellite phone to ask his best friend to send someone to support Sebastian, saying that he would ask the US government special task force is stationed near Paldonian to help them just go north to the border. Then Juan Venegas borrowed the phone to call General George, who is also his nephew. From the panic in his voice, Juan Venegas judged that it was his nephew who was the mastermind behind the recent assassination, so he wanted Mason and Clay to help him find out the truth of the incident. But the male lead did not agree and led the female reporter to the site. Sure enough, as soon as they arrived, a helicopter flew in, but after dropping off the two soldiers, the helicopter flew high again, and people smelled something bad. Mason quickly led the group away. At this place, the latter at the immediately opened fire with 6 barrels, causing them to run away with their pants down. The other 2 soldiers also chased after them like the ghost of Butan. Fortunately, it was a tropical jungle with canopy trees. The tall tree helped them avoid the enemy bullets, and Clay had to work hard climbing the mountain pass and wading through the stream. But the helicopter still did not let go of the 2 people. It fired cat at them but fortunately did not hit anyone. They all ran to a dense grassland. The male lead guessed that the other helicopter would circle back to attack, so he decided to pull out the Bear's M82 and shoot after putting the target in sight. He held his breath and then opened fire, but the helicopter was still heading towards them, so Mason immediately fired a second shot. And then Tuesday, when he looked closely, it turned out that he had completely shot the pilot. "Do you see how good I am?" Unexpectedly, as soon as they crowed, the helicopter swooped down and landed right where they were. Luckily, they ran away in time, or else the grass would have grown green. But as they moved into the forest, the 2 of them suddenly lost each other. Hiding under a tree thinking that the enemy would not find her, she unexpectedly discovered that a soldier had discovered her location. Just as he was about to attack, Mason suddenly appeared and rushed to attacks. But Duha not been there for a long time, having been well trained. He was quickly controlled by his combat experience, helped him promptly counterattack, knock him down to the ground, and then lock him to death. Just as the 2 about to leave, the soldier was still there, suddenly found the male lead and put gun butt on his head, loudly interrogating them both about where Juan Venegas was. Who would have thought that as soon as he finished speaking, he immediately took a pill and put it on his body on the spot. It turned out that the president had killed him. Thanks to that, the male lead started to have good feelings towards him. But why did he bring such a large gold-plated gun to the clearing? Only by doing so would he look like the image of a dictator, right? After hearing this, Mason was a bit confused, but he didn't pay much attention at this time. Juan Venegas suggested that the 2 of them go to the village where he was born to rest and temporarily hide on the other side from the bad boy nephew who was present when the plane crashed. George showed that Colonel Henry's special forces were as useless as the men he sent to assassinate Juan Venegas. But before he could laugh, the colonel opened fire and killed George's assistant, make him so scared that he spits out his pants. "If you uncle is not dealt with soon, the one who will die will be you. Don't let the bosses be disappointed." At this time, the 3 Mason ghosts have reached the village here. Juan Venegas okay, welcomed like a hero. They showered, changed clothes, and then conducted an interview filmed by phone. Now, Juan Venegas can freely tell the truth that has been covered up by West for so long before he was promoted. Being president is asking for help from the CIA in exchange for the country mineral resources being exploited by foreign corporation. But more and more they want more and more. As this continues, Paldonia will soon reach the point of collapse. No longer understanding that once there are no more resources, this country will sink into poverty and chaos. So Juan Venegas decided to kick the foreigners out of his homeland, but they did not accept that, should find every way to kill him to establish a new government to legalize the sending of soldiers to a sovereign country. They have labeled him as the dictator specializing in smuggling heroin and possessing the last chemical weapon. Juan Venegas promised that Paldonia resources would forever belong to the people. Hearing this, he dreamed and realized that he had understood that he had been this man all along. That night, Clay felt deprived of love, so he went to the male protagonist to confide. She lifted his pants and then his shirt to seduce him, but the nun firmly refused. "Please respect my honor. Even though my relationships with my wife is not good, I am not that kind of person, like to go around breeding." US government. He simply asked the army to come pick them up. Things suddenly became confusing. The purpose of sending Mason was for him to kill Juan Venegas to avenge his deceased comrades. Hearing this, the male lead suddenly pulled out his gun and walked straight to the president. However, he did not kill him but wanted to find out the truth. At that moment, the soldiers led by Colonel Henry arrived and saw that. The group immediately followed the instructions of the local people to flee. But the village chief, who was also a close friend of Juan Venegas, was captured and threatened by the colonel. Not wanting to see his close friend in danger because of him, the president decided to show up right at the moment of danger. Mason and Clay rode horseback to take him away. Lin Mai immediately chased after them and opened fire wildly but did not hit anyone. However, while running away, Clay suddenly fell off the bike, fell to the ground and was caught by them while the two men rode downhill together and were lucky to escape. Juan Venegas said that as long as he was not caught, Clay would still be safe while they both followed the road, forced to move back to the city. The president said he had long known that Ghost Mountain was one of the old soldiers who wanted to kill him, and he also revealed the shocking truth of who was behind the shooting down of the helicopter that killed his teammates. He died because the bad guys threatened him, that if Juan Venegas didn't listen, many other group of soldier would come here to assassinate him. So Mason and those innocent people were just pawns for the cruel people, just greedy. As soon as he arrived in the city, the male protagonist called his best friend to ask him to do something. Next, he escorted Juan Venegas to meet the boss of the rebel group. He could not believe that the boss and the president they are two friends. They deliberately create an opposition so that the Americans will not be suspicious and pump money to the rebels to overthrow the government. It is true that there must be noble men. This time Juan Venegas came here to I asked my friend to help me solve some problems. The next morning, the colonel took his group to meet Mason to exchange for the president. As soon as they met, the two sides tried to see what the other person's heart was like, but Nam Chin let to ensure the safety of his client. He had to listen to the enemy words. Right when Juan Venegas voluntarily handed himself over, people suddenly walked out with bans, demonstrations demanding soldiers get out of Paldonia because they can't explode guns, so they had to stand by and let Mason lead the group to escape. This was the gift that the rebel boss gave to his friend. Taking advantage of the chaotic situation, Juan Venegas led the two of them down a secret path to the headquarters. At this time, his grandson was still sitting in his chair because he was about to become the head of the country. Suddenly, Juan Venegas stepped out, scaring the other eggs. However, he did not want the ghost to open fire and harm his grandson. I'm the only one who says that it's just a puppet of the West, and when it no longer useful, they kill me to find someone else to replace me. The people of Paldonia destroy a better life instead of being invaded by foreign invaders. In the end, Jock understood and followed his uncle's side. Clay also took this opportunity to broadcast live to the whole world. At that moment, General Pa opened the door and rushed in. Without saying a word, he opened fire and shot straight at him. The moment the president fell, he promptly shot the traitor away. Fortunately, Juan Venegas was wearing a bulletproof vest, so he was fine, but his unlucky nephew was hit by a stray bullet and immediately collapsed from his injuries. It was so severe that he died right away, and before he could even cry, the soldiers under Paplo command came in with guns. Temporarily put aside their sadness, Juan Venegas told the soldiers that even though they were following the orders of their superiors above, but as a Paldonia people, you have a responsibility to this country. We have been controlled by the West and grabbed too many resources. Now is the time to rise up, drive them out of here under persuasion. By Juan Venegas the soldiers were and decided to turn their guns to attack. Henry men defended the fatherland. However, they were well strained, so it was difficult for Paldonia's soldiers to withstand the overwhelming pressure of the three ghosts. Sun had to use a secret tunnel to move to the presidential safe room, advertising that not even a fly could penetrate this place. But as soon as he finished crowing, NGO Tat stopped by and turned off all the light and continued. Moving into the hallway, he saw a colonel man in front of him, so Mason decided to stay and fight and let the remaining two people leave. Nam Chin was about to ambush the enemy when he saw a grenade flying towards him. Luckily, she dodged in time, but unfortunately fell down the stairs, causing her back to re-injure herself. She tried to suppress the pain. She hit against the wall and successfully hit a soldier in the basket. At this time, Henry also appeared. The two fought back and forth, quite evenly, causing all the guns in his hand to fall to the ground. However, the colonel played dirty. He pulled out a knife and slashed Sun continuously. On the other side, the group was actively live-streaming the scene of Paldonia soldiers fighting with special forces, while the male lead struggled to fend off the attack. During his opponent attack, he also confessed that he had ordered his subordinates to shoot the helicopter, causing Mason teammates to die unjustly. However, when they both fell down the stairs, Henry overpowered Mason and held the sword to finish him off, right at the moment when thousands of attack were hanging on his spleen. Clay appeared in time and hit Henry directly in the throat, causing him to be unable to breathe and fall to his death. After dealing with the leader, the male lead walked out to drive the remaining soldiers. Dead like a recluse, made Clay and Juan Venegas squint their eyes in admiration. When everything ended, a convoy of armored vehicles led by Sebastian rushed in to claim the victory. It was clear that the Western government saw that the coup was not succeeded, so he sent troops to support him to get the reputation and also to erase all traces of them. At the end of the movie, Juan Venegas announced his resignation as president and spent all the profits from selling resources to the people of Paldonia, and the male lead did not. Receiving a simple girl from him was just $5 million in my bank account.